Let's talk about one of the most enduring and, frankly, one of the most bizarre military legends of the entire 20th century. It's a story packed with secret science, terrifying consequences, and, of course, a massive government cover-up. We're talking invisibility, teleportation, even time travel. This is the incredible story of the Philadelphia experiment. Okay, so picture this. It's 1943. The world is deep into World War II, and the Battle of the Atlantic is absolutely raging. German U-boats, magnetic mines, they're just wrecking Allied shipping. So the U.S. Navy is desperate, and I mean desperate, for some kind of edge, a real game changer. And according to the legend, all their hopes were pinned on this ship, right here, the USS Eldridge, sitting in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, about to become part of a top-secret experiment. So the story goes that on October 28th, these massive generators on the Eldridge fire up, and people on other ships nearby said they saw this weird, eerie green fog start to just swirl around the hull, completely swallowing it. And then, a few moments later, when the fog just suddenly lifted, the Eldridge was gone. I mean, not just hidden, completely and utterly vanished. Poof! But this is where the story goes from just strange to completely off the rails. You see, the USS Eldridge didn't just become invisible to the naked eye. No. The legend claims it reappeared almost instantly in Norfolk, Virginia. That's over 200 miles away. Some versions of the story even say it jumped back in time by 10 minutes before vanishing again and zapping right back to the Philadelphia shipyard. But when the Eldridge finally rematerialized back in Philadelphia, it was clear something had gone horribly, horribly wrong. The crew? They were a mess. A lot of them were just dazed and confused, others had terrible burns, some had just gone completely insane. And then you get to the most gruesome part of the tale. Some sailors were found literally fused into the ship's metal bulkheads, their bodies merged at a molecular level with the steel. So you've got invisibility, teleportation, and this devastating human cost? This is the story, the legend that has absolutely captivated conspiracy theorists for decades. But you have to ask, where does the wild story end, and where does the truth actually begin? I mean, it is an absolutely mind-bending tale, right? But what happens when we pull back that curtain of myth and start looking for some hard evidence? Let's go investigate what the U.S. Navy's own documents have to say about this supposedly historic day. All right, let's play detective. Our first stop is the Naval Historical Center, and we're going straight to the source, the war diary and the official deck log of the USS Eldridge itself. This is the ship's diary, the day-by-day, hour-by-hour record of everything it did. Okay, so let's take a close look at the official record. This timeline, it's pulled directly from the ship's logs, and, well, it tells a very different story. You can see right here, the Eldridge was commissioned in New York back in August. Then it spent a month or so on sea trials down near Bermuda. Now, the key date is October 18th. That's when it gets back to New York Harbor, and it stayed there until November 1st, before sailing to Norfolk. There is absolutely no mention of Philadelphia anywhere during this critical period. So what happens when you put the myth and the reality side by side? The whole story just completely falls apart. The legend says the ship was in Philly on October 28th. The logs say it was anchored in New York. The legend needs a witness ship to see it in Norfolk. Well, the log for that ship shows it was already sailing for the Mediterranean. Every single verifiable detail just hits a brick wall in the paper trail. But hang on a second. Could there be a little kernel of truth buried in all this? I mean, was the Navy experimenting with some kind of invisibility technology that just got blown way, way out of proportion over the years? And the answer to that is, yeah, kind of. You see, the Navy absolutely was working on a type of invisibility, just not the kind you're thinking of. It was a process called degaussing. Basically, they'd wrap the ship in these huge electrical cables, run a current through them, and it would cancel out the ship's magnetic signature. This made it invisible to the magnetic triggers on German mines. It was a brilliant, life-saving technology, but it had absolutely nothing to do with visual cloaking or teleporting across the country. And this brings us to the real mystery, doesn't it? If the ship's logs prove it was just a normal tour of duty and the invisibility was really just standard degaussing, then where in the world did we get a legend about teleportation and men fused into steel? Well, the answer isn't in some secret government lab. It's in a series of letters. Turns out, this entire sprawling legend can be traced back to just two people. First, you have Morris K. Jessup. He was an astronomer who wrote a book back in 1955 called The Case for the UFO. And the second person? A very mysterious man who started writing letters to him, a man who called himself Carlos Allende. So, after Jessup's book on UFOs comes out, he starts getting these letters from Allende, whose real name we now know was Carl Allen. Allen tells him that he was on a nearby merchant ship and he saw the whole Philadelphia experiment happen with his own two eyes. He was the original source for all of it, the green fog, the teleportation, the terrible effects on the crew. All of it, he claimed, was made possible by Einstein's unified field theory. Now, Allen's letters were bizarre, to say the least. Even Jessup, who was a guy dedicated to UFO research, found them really hard to swallow. The letters were just filled with these wild, rambling claims. I mean, look at this quote. Sailors walking through walls and just disappearing? Others spontaneously bursting into flames? It really painted a picture of a man with a very vivid imagination. So Jessup was pretty much ready to write this whole thing off as the ramblings of a crank. But then something really strange happened that gave this story an unexpected and totally undeserved dose of credibility. The US government got involved. So someone, and it was almost certainly Allen himself, anonymously mails a copy of Jessup's book to the Office of Naval Research. The book is filled with these handwritten notes in the margins going on and on about the Philadelphia experiment. Now, for reasons we still don't totally understand, a couple of officers at the ONR took an interest in it. They even paid to have a few copies of this annotated book printed up. For conspiracy theorists, this was the smoking gun. I mean, why would the Navy care if it wasn't true, right? And this is where the story's origin takes a really tragic turn. You see, Morris Jessup's career was kind of failing. He got completely obsessed with proving Allen's story was real, thinking it would make him famous again. In 1959, he actually told a friend he was on the verge of a major breakthrough. The very next day, he was found dead. The official ruling was suicide, and he was known to be depressed. But the timing, plus the fact there was no autopsy, has just fueled speculation ever since that maybe, just maybe, he was silenced for getting too close to the truth. So, the Philadelphia experiment, as a real historical event, it's a myth. The documents are pretty clear on that. But the story of how that myth came to be, starting with one man's strange letters, fueled by some misplaced official curiosity, and ending in a tragedy, is maybe an even more fascinating story. It really leaves us with a bigger question. Why are we so drawn to these tales of secret knowledge? Why do we want to believe them, even when all the evidence points in the other direction?